Welcome back, my name's Kyle Lacochi, and if you're new to the channel, I am a professional photographer and videographer. I mostly deal with real estate, so today's topic and what I'm going to walk you through is how to edit Twilight photography. Now, before we get into that, if you do enjoy these videos, find them helpful, please consider subscribing, it really helps out. Now, when you're shooting for Twilight photography, it really helps to know what time of the evening to shoot at, and I always suggest 15-20 minutes after sunset. But in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you two examples. The first one is going to be when I took it about 15-20 minutes after sunset, and the second example is going to be just around sunset, if not a little bit before, and you can kind of see how the lighting changes and how when you do take it 15-20 minutes after makes it a lot easier on you editing wise. All right, so let's jump into Lightroom, and starting from the top, I have both sets of images. I take 5 exposures of each shot. So what you're gonna wanna do first is merge all 5 photos. So I just press Shift and then click the first image and then click the last image that I want. And if you go Photo and then HDR merge right here, so then to merge them in Lightroom, I do Control H, and that merges them, and then you just have to click merge right up here. So that's gonna blend them all together. So that's our first image. And then for the second one, highlight all of them, and then Control H. That's our second image. So we're gonna start with the second one. This is the one that I mentioned was taken about 15 to 20 minutes after sunset. So if we click on that image, this is what it looks like. So not super pretty right now, but we're gonna make it look great. If I skip anything that I'm talking through, let me know in the comments. Happy to answer any questions. All right, so first of all, I start off with the alignment of the image. I just wanna make sure I'm looking at it straight and everything. So sometimes I'll do auto align, and then I do like to crop in quite a bit. I don't need so much of the landscape. Maybe that's a little bit too much. And then really just make some fine adjustments. Make sure that it's exactly the way that we want it. These are just the way that I edit Twilights. Some people do like it more blue, make it, really seem like nighttime. I tend to like things on the warmer side. So right now the temperature, you see right down here, the white balance is 3700. I'm gonna bump that up till the place that I like it. So yeah, I'm at about 89, almost 9,000 Kelvin. That's where I see it looking the best right now. And you can already see that the home is glowing a lot more now that the temperature has been bumped up a bit. Honestly, this isn't a bad image by itself. We're just gonna make a few adjustments from here. So since most of the home and the lights coming out of the home are yellow orange, we can come down here to the color mixer and increase the luminance of the orange. And some people like their Twilight windows a little bit more yellow, some like a little bit more orange. So if you do like it yellow, you can change the hue of that color. Totally up to you and your preference. I, again, like it a little bit more on the warm side, so we're gonna keep it there. So personally, I feel like the front porch looks pretty good by itself. So I'm just gonna try to match this upstairs window to this. This looks a little bit more yellow than I'd like it to be compared to this. So if you go to mask and then do object, or you can just press S as a shortcut, it gives you this circle. Sometimes I like to get in close here. All right, so once you have the glass highlighted, I come down here to the color temperature and increase the temperature up a bit. And then sometimes I'll play with shadows or highlights. Not highlights in that scenario. Still looking a little yellow, so I'm gonna keep introducing the temperature. So yeah, small, tiny adjustment, but I do think the home is looking a little bit shadowy to me, so I'm going to increase the shadows of this to brighten it up a little bit. So you can already see that this time of day, like the photo is almost already ready to go. Because it was dark enough out and the windows were really lit up, it makes editing a lot easier. Once we get the image to look the way that we want it to, basically like this, if we go back out to our grid, so if you just press G on your keyboard, we get back to the photos. If you right click and then we go down to edit in Photoshop, this is the way we're going to replace the sky. Now the sky that we currently had, we could probably manipulate that to look, you know, decent, but I prefer to replace the sky in Twilight's just to make it sure it looks perfect. So if we go to edit and then sky replace within Photoshop, Photoshop already has some skies that you can replace it with already ready to go. So yeah, if you click in here, there's already several options. I prefer a little bit more neutral sunsets. Some people like, you can change it to whatever kind of dramatic sunset you want. I prefer to be on the more simple side because I don't want to draw too much attention away from the home itself. And then once I'm in here, I do like to keep the foreground lighting, edge lighting, and color adjustment all the way up so it doesn't change the image too much. The sky is looking a little blue for my taste, so I'm going to bump up the temperature a little bit here. All right, that's looking pretty good to me, and we can still manipulate it back once we're back in Lightroom. So from here, I just save the image, and then once you exit, close out of Photoshop, it will put that new image back into Lightroom. All right, so we're almost there. I think now if we go to mask and go to sky, I like this a little bit punchier, so I'm gonna increase the saturation. And then Twilight's being Twilight, I do like to add a little bit more magenta into the image, as if it's, you know, got that little bit more color in the sky. All right, so this is pretty much ready to go. Sometimes I do like to just check if there's any other final small tweaks that I like to do. So sometimes I'll come down to dehaze, maybe make it a little bit punchier, and yeah, that's looking pretty good to me. So here's without the sky replacement, and then here's with the sky replacement, and you can see how much of a difference that makes. All right, so that's our final image for this photo. I just wanted to show you first how much easier it is, less work you have to do if the lighting on the home is already ready to go. So jumping into this second photo here, you can see it's quite a bit lighter out, and we're gonna have to really push this image quite a bit. So starting with the straightening, we're gonna crop it in and just make sure it's as straight as we can. All right, now that we got it like that, I'm gonna drop my highlights. I'm going to increase the temperature to, our last image was about 9,000, so that's looking pretty good for this image. So if we want it to get to look like our other image, we're gonna have to drop the shadows quite a bit. Maybe increase the dehaze to make it a little bit punchier, but now you're starting to see the front porch to look a little bit too dark. So because of that, we're going to pull the object tool, which is if you press S on your keyboard. We're going to highlight all of this area because we don't want it too dark. And that got pretty much all of it except for the front door. Now we got it. All right, so now we're gonna bump the shadows up on the front porch a little bit. Sometimes, in this scenario, this is what I'm gonna do, which is I'm gonna replace the sky right now so I know how to adjust the windows accordingly with how the sky looks. If we go back to the grid and we right click on the image, edit in Photoshop, and then once we're in Photoshop, edit, sky replacement, And we're going to replace with the same sky. Bump up that temperature again. Increase the lighting, edge lighting, color adjustment, and then save the image. Exit out of Photoshop. Puts that into Lightroom. Now we have a photo that we can work with a little bit more. So I'm going to go down to dehaze. I just want the image to be a little bit more contrasty. All right, so now we have the windows to deal with here. So if we take that masking tool, the object, if you press S, you get this circle. So now we're gonna highlight all these windows. And if you need to punch in, you just press spacebar and then you can pull in closer. So I'm gonna start with these windows because they all have similar exposure. So if I'm changing all of them at the same time, they're gonna all look more similar to each other. So if we bump up exposure, looks pretty good. I'm gonna want to, they're looking a little washed out for me. So I'm gonna increase the temperature to give it a little bit more orange. That looks pretty good to me. So let's keep that there. If you want to increase how these lights look on the side of the door, you can also take another mask and do a radial gradient or just press R. And sometimes I like to do this. I'll keep the feather at the highest it can be, increase the temperature and then also the exposure. So you can see how that increases the light there. And then if you want to copy it, which you can copy and then paste, it just pastes it right over. So you take that other one and put it over the other light. So now you've increased the lighting of that as well. All right, so these two windows are I'm gonna do them at separate times because this one's a little bit darker than this one is. So if we come over here, we'll take that object mask, which is pressing S again. We're gonna highlight all these windows. And once we've got them all highlighted, just double check that all the area of the window is covered. We're gonna increase the temperature. And then because it is pretty dark, we're gonna increase the shadows and then the exposure. And you can see now how that is starting to match these other windows a little bit. Now what I don't like is that some of these columns on the windows are a little bit too yellow for me. So what I'm gonna do is once I'm on this mask, click the subtract, take a brush. This is too big, so make that smaller. And we can come in here. If we decrease the feather size, but leave the flow at 100. Make that about the width of the column here. And you can erase the parts that you don't want. So all around the edges of the window. And before I forget, in order to make a straight line, if you click once, come down to your next point, hold shift, it will create a straight line of that mask for you. So that's how I'm doing that up and down these columns. All right, now that we have those columns done, it looks a little bit better, looks a little bit cleaner. I will say I think this orange is looking a little bit too magenta for me. So if I'm gonna come down here to the color panel, go to my hue of orange and then make it a little bit more yellow, that looks a little bit more natural to me. So bump that up a little bit. Now for these final set of windows, take that object mask tool again. Okay. Then again, bump the color up so you can already see it's a lot more orangey. Bump the saturation and bump the shadows. So we're getting a decent glow out of this. All right, so now that we've adjusted that window, that looks pretty good to me. I will say one thing also is that the home I think is looking good itself. I think it's a little too light out. So if we take the object or a mask and we mask the subject, you'll see that it's masking the home. If we invert that, we can actually decrease the exposure of everything else going on. And then this way it looks, to me, I prefer a little bit darker of twilight photos. And then last thing we're going to do is adjust that sky that we had done, put a little bit more magenta into that. So now it looks a little bit more like sunset, maybe a little bit of color temperature as well. All right, so that's our final image for this one. You can compare this one to the other one that we shot, and you can see how much more it glows once you take the photo at, I would say, the correct time. Again, just kind of goes to show you the importance of the timing when you take your twilight photography. All right, well, that's it. Thank you guys for joining me as I edited these 2 examples of twilight photos. If you guys have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next one.